where this Nebraska team is at right now. Is it the offense or is it the defense carrying the day for Nebraska men's basketball? That is what we've set out here to answer. 402-464-5685. If you're listening to the show live, love to have you as a part of the show. Give me your thoughts as well. With a lot of the talk regarding Nebraska's defense, I wanted to dig into just how sustainable I think the defensive success is for Nebraska, because it's hard to argue against the defense right now. It's been really good. In fact, let's just go ahead and look at some of these surface numbers for Nebraska. If you're watching on stream, I'll get them pulled up as best I can. A little small on the Excel spreadsheet, but just bear with me here. So some of the surface numbers for Nebraska men's basketball: points per game allowed, 67.1. That's pretty good. Not elite, but pretty good. You can survive with that. Teams only shooting 46% against Nebraska, 29% from three, 74% at the free throw line, which is actually a pretty good mark for opponents in shooting free throws against Nebraska. Now that's really a defensive stat, but I'll tell you later why I ended up throwing that one in there. Rebounds per game, Nebraska is grabbing 38.5 per game, and more important than that, Nebraska is out rebounding its opponents on average by about 2.5 rebounds per game. Nebraska has also recorded 55 steals and 30 blocks per game. So 85 total stocks. If I use the word stocks, I'm referring to the combination of steals and blocks moving forward, averaging 5.5 steals per game and 3 blocks per game. Not bad numbers. But then we can also think about, outside of the numbers, what is it that Nebraska has done? I mean, 2 really solid, really maybe even borderline great defensive performances in its last 5 games. It's the 5th time in the 2000s we witnessed Nebraska hold Creighton in the 50s. Not just 250 points, but only 5 times since 2000 has Nebraska held Creighton in the 50s. 2 of those games have happened under Fred Hoiberg. They've both, of course, been Nebraska wins in the last handful of years. Nebraska is 4-1 in games where it holds Creighton into the 50s. The only loss was back in the early 2000s. But this is a team in Creighton, yes, sure, still finding itself, still integrating, still acclimating, but a team that has had no reservations about putting points up on Nebraska in years past. Nebraska holds a pain, a thorn in the side, a well-coached Creighton offense to 50 points in a 21-point Husker win. And then they went up themselves. Wisconsin, a team that averages 88 points per game. Nebraska holds 30 points, essentially, below its season average. They hold Wisconsin to 60. Last week's Big Ten Player of the Week, John Blackwell, 1 of 11 for 7 points. And he only made, like I said, that one shot. 4 of them were at the free throw line. That's a guy that averages 21 points per game. And even the work that they did really after the first 5-6 minutes on other guys was pretty admirable work. And I want to dig into what it's been for Nebraska that has made them so successful. We'll get to that throughout the course of the show. But Creighton held well below its season average and certainly well below its rivalry average for the last decade or so. Wisconsin, 28 points below its season average, a team that really made that transition to a high-pace, up-and-down team that wants to run and gun. Nebraska holds well below. Nebraska's actually held 9 of its 10 opponents under their season average of points per game so far this year. I will give you one guess in about 3 seconds to try to figure out who the team that Nebraska did not hold under its season scoring average was. And your time is up. No takers on the text line. The correct answer is Oklahoma in the high-scoring affair at the Sanford Pentagon up there in Sioux Falls. Only one team through the first third of the season has scored more against Nebraska than it would be expected to score in any average game for them. You hold teams below their scoring average 90% of the time. More often than not, you're going to like the way the things turn out for you. And looking at some of the numbers, and I'll share this from Bart Torvik. We will get back to this coming up here in just a little bit. Really, the numbers that I think we need to focus on are right here in these top halves. You see the 2024 season, that's the 2023-24 season. Right down here, 8 seed, round of 64. This is the tournament team that obviously lost in the first round to Texas A&M. But what you'll notice here is that team ended the season ranked number 29 in the country in adjusted defensive rating. 29th, that's really good. Last year's team, 44th, still good, still above average. This year's team actually rates higher, 21st in the country in defensive efficiency. Even this offense right here, right? 117 in terms of the adjusted offensive rating. That's the best raw number of the Fred Hoiberg era. You see, though, right here, the 2023-4 team actually ended up higher relative to the rest of the country with a 116 rating for the year. That ended up 30th overall, but still plenty good. And don't worry, we'll come back to this Bart Torvik chart here in just a little bit. There's a lot more to dive into when you look at the numbers for Nebraska men's basketball. But I show you that to show you that as good as the offense has been, as much as it's been the talking point throughout the offseason for Nebraska, best shooting team Fred Hoiberg's had, Rink Mast back, DeMarcus Lawrence back, offensive growth from Sam Hoiberg, contributions from Braden Frager, Price Sanford being as advertised. The defense is still a stronger strength relative to college hoops this season. Of the last 4 seasons, this is actually the strongest defense, and people have been taking note of that. You think about a guy like Seth Davis, editor-in-chief of Hoops HQ. He'll show up on CBS's studio panels from time to time as well. He says in a tweet the night of the Wisconsin game, I said earlier that this is the best defensive team Fred Hoiberg has ever coached. That's very much in evidence right now. High-octane Badgers on track for 62 points. He wasn't the only one mentioning this. You can also look at a guy who spends a lot more time watching some Big Ten basketball. This was the end, about the last 20 seconds or so, of about a minute and a half answer from Andy Katz with Fox and the Big Ten Network. Here's Andy Katz on the Nebraska defense following the Huskers win over Wisconsin as well.
And so this group, they've got experience, they're older, and I think more than anything, it's what they've done defensively. 60 points
60 points allowed, yeah.
John Blackwell goes 1 for 11. I mean, they are locking teams up. Nebraska under Fred Hoiberg, who obviously was a great shooter, great offensive player, they haven't always been the best defensive teams. This may be their best defensive team under Fred Hoiberg.
That's Andy Katz, again, speaking on the Big Ten Network after Nebraska's 30-point victory over Wisconsin. That's 2 relatively renowned national voices saying this is the best defensive team Fred Hoiberg has had. Again, relative to each year, based on some of the numbers I've shown you, they're not wrong. This is the highest rated defensive team Nebraska's had, certainly in the last 5 years. There was kind of a weird hiccup, funny enough, in Fred Hoiberg's second year in charge. The offense was not very good, but the defense was actually surprisingly solid in the second year, 2021. Nebraska goes just 7-20 overall, 3-16 in Big Ten play, but was the number 31 defense in the country that year by adjusted defensive rating. So, okay, weird kind of year, but then 31st down to 152nd. And then that's when you see Fred Hoiberg invest in the defense. From 152nd to 73rd, the 29th year they make the tournament, backslide a little bit to 44th, and then back all the way up into the top 25 at number 21 so far this year. So you can't argue with the numbers being what they are right now. Nebraska has been a legitimately good to great defensive team. Not elite, not top of the sport, and we'll get to some of the reasons why. But I have to maybe take a step back and wonder, why am I surprised? Why is Nebraska this good defensively? Did I underrate the scheme? Did I underrate the personnel? And I think we can go over that right now, because I think the scheme fits the players. I think the players fit the scheme, and having that chemistry, that knowledge of what to do and when to do it is a huge driving factor for Nebraska. Because as we look at the personnel, you're really not blown away by it in any meaningful way. The 2 guys that will obviously get the most flowers when it comes to the defensive impact, especially when you think about the box score numbers, are going to be Berke Boyuktanjel and Sam Hoiberg, the guy that's led Nebraska in blocks and the guy that's led Nebraska in steals. It makes sense that Fred Hoiberg has talked about those 2 guys. It's been pretty obvious to see those 2 guys in action on the defensive side of the ball. As a team, Nebraska's defensive rating on Evan Miyakawa is the 3rd best in the Big Ten. We'll get to that again coming up here in just a little bit. But when you think about the actual box score impact that Nebraska's players have had, it's Berke Boyuktanjel and it's Sam Hoiberg are the guys that you will think of first. And I'll put the Evan Mia numbers up on screen here for you to see. Let me zoom in on them for you. So right here, kind of in the middle of the screen, the Bayesian performance rating is the overall catch-all for Evan Mia. But Berke Boyuktanjel at a 2.82, Sam Hoiberg at a 2.66. far and away the best on Nebraska's team. The only other guys with any real semblance of darker orange color that you can see right now are Rink Mast, funny enough, and then Cale Jacobson as well. And to put these numbers in context, Evan actually just tweeted this out today. The best offensive players will have an OBPR of 8, and the best defensive players will have a DBPR of 6, showing you that, Sam Hoiberg and Berke Boyikdengel are comfortably above the average defender at 0. Maybe not individually a top-tier elite defender, but certainly impactful ones between the two of them. So you think about those two guys, and then you go through the rest of the personnel for Nebraska. Rink Mast, competent, absolutely competent. He communicates. He's in the right spot at the right time, can guard down low, can guard a little bit on the perimeter. Price Sanford competes. Cale Jacobson has been a little bit of a revelation defensively. Maybe not as much in terms of the box score, but that's a dude that competes defensively. Frager adds a little bit of that athletic pop. Jamarcus Lawrence got the Blackwell and the Boyd assignment quite a bit against Wisconsin. He might even be a little bit underrated when it comes to being a defender for Nebraska. Even a guy like Jared Garcia, right? He's not Juwan Gary as a defender. They're very different types of players, but Garcia is fine. And then we can compare this team, right, to the team that made the tournament. That's probably the ultimate end goal, for Nebraska, is to get back there and give yourself a chance to win a game like that. Looking at the personnel, right, Sam Hoiberg on that team, he's higher impact this year with a couple more years of experience. Berke Boyikdengel, better and more impactful defender consistently than Josiah Alec was. Rink Mast and Jamarcus Lawrence have probably improved from where they were just a couple years ago. Maybe not by leaps and bounds, but a couple years of experience, it's hard to get worse. I don't think Rink Mast's knee has necessarily limited him on the defensive end. Price Sanford and CJ Wilcher, probably a wash. Maybe lean Sanford for what Nebraska is asking him to do and the types of players he's being asked to guard. Cale Jacobson and Braden Frager right now are better defenders than Keisei Tominaga and Bryce Williams were at that time, right? Bryce could play defense. Keisei Tominaga had a knack for good hands in terms of the timing and getting steals and deflections, but you weren't sticking Keisei on the ball. They were hunting him. Cale Jacobson has drawn some tough matchups and handled him pretty well, and same with Frager on the wing. So this is probably the best defensive personnel Nebraska's had overall, which is where I think we can start talking about Nebraska's scheme in some ways and what Nebraska is trying to accomplish. I wrote out in my notes, just trying to compare different styles of defenses. The way that I'm going to try to have us think about it is, think about St. John's, right? That's like open field medieval warfare. We're just going to go hand-to-hand combat. It's going to be up close and personal. It's going to be dirty. It's going to be stinky. It's going to be grimy. It's going to be bloody. We're going to beat you to a pulp. You're going to beat us to a pulp. Whoever is less pulp-ish will end up winning at the end of the day. You think about like peak Virginia under Tony Bennett, siege warfare. You just can't go anywhere. You think you see an opening, it disappears pretty quickly. That's that peak Virginia sort of team with the gaps and a lot of the no middle. You think about like Press Virginia or Havoc VCU under Shaka Smart when they made their Final Four run. I would consider that maybe like a cavalry stampede. Hey, here are a bunch of big dudes just running straight at you, a lot of limbs everywhere. How are you going to handle yourself in the face of all that pressure coming at you? You're not going to be faster. It's going to be really hard to get away. Can you maintain your poise? So if those are those three defensive schemes, we know that Nebraska doesn't really do any of those. I think Nebraska's defense is more like an urban sniper kind of shootout in some ways, right? You're posted up. You're doing your responsibility. You're looking for those openings to get deflections, to get tips, and not really leaving any areas exposed, right? Because if you think about where you could expose those other defenses, right? The St. John's defense where they're all up in your grill. If you're strong with the ball, you rip through, you can draw fouls, or you can potentially hit well-timed back cuts. Against Virginia, I saw this time and time again. Duke would have some of its best shooting nights from deep. Virginia didn't want to let you in the paint. Well, if you're hitting from three, you can shoot right over top of that defense, right? Bombs away. Press Virginia and Havoc VCU. How do you beat them? You handle the ball. You take care of it. You make the extra pass. You find your numbers advantage. You don't panic. That's not the way that you beat this Nebraska team. Sure, the basics are the basics of basketball. You play good basketball, you can find some creases. But Nebraska's defense is not one that necessarily has that definable, observable strength of aggression, of kind of being that amoeba that takes away all your driving lanes or is always up in your face and pressuring, Nebraska's just kind of there, goading you into doing what Nebraska wants you to do. And there's a really good tweet that illustrates both the offense and the defense, really, for Nebraska. I'm going to pull up now if you're watching on stream. So this is from a CBB_players. It reads as such: Nebraska has the single best rim denial defense in the country per Hoop Explorer, allowing just 19% of opponent shots to come at the rim. Using Haslametric.com's shot proximity stat, it's clear Nebraska is in a league of their own right now. If you're on stream with me, you can see up in the top left of this graph is Nebraska, the team that is forcing the longest shots, really, of the top 45 teams in Haslametric's adjusted net ratings. Nebraska is far and away forcing the longest average shot for an opponent. Okay, but we'll get into this as well, because why is Nebraska in the top left as opposed to, in the top right? Well, that's because the y-axis, your vertical axis, shooting proximity allowed, green is teams are shooting from further out, right? The further you are, the more your percentages should go down. Well, the x-axis, your horizontal axis, Nebraska is also shooting from the furthest away on average on offense of any team in the top 45. Right? This bottom right quadrant are the teams that allow teams to get relatively close to the rim and put pressure on the rim themselves. So you see a St. John's down here as well. Arizona probably in that mix, I would say, trending that way as well. More of a physical-based Arizona team that likes to get it into the perimeter. Then you start looking up here in the top left. You see a long-rangey Illinois team that Nebraska is going to play tomorrow at the time of this show. Here in the same quadrant, you see a Duke team that switches pretty much everything with some NBA types of principles there as well. You see Purdue and North Carolina State with the personnel, the size that they have. It makes sense that those teams would shoot or force their opponents to shoot from further away. And yet all those teams, every single team on this graph, takes its average shot closer to the hoop than Nebraska does. And that'll come into play coming up here just a little bit later as we continue this discussion. Like any defense, Nebraska wants to force inefficient shots. What are inefficient shots? It's non-paint twos, it's above the break threes, and as many contested shots as possible. Look at, I think Nick Boyd's performance for Wisconsin against Nebraska. Yeah, hit a 3 or 2 against the Huskers, but the shot that I remember him taking more than any was kind of a push shot, a floater in the intermediate range, had an and one-on-one, had one to break a little bit of a Nebraska run. But that's a shot that if you're Nebraska, you tip your cap. You got Wisconsin to take the shot that you wanted. You goaded them into taking a shot that is not analytically friendly. And we'll get into why that matters, especially for this Nebraska team here coming up. But that kind of push shot, that floater, is exactly the shot that really any modern defense wants to force. Like that tweet showed, it's still up on screen here for those of you watching. Nebraska's opponents really don't get many shots directly at the rim, despite Nebraska not having that traditional rim protector or, consistently elite on-ball pressure, right? There's one Sam Hoiberg on this Nebraska team. Marcus Lawrence will get up in your grill a little bit, but it's not his calling card. Cale Jacobson from time to time, Frager when he gets a wild hair, and that's really about it, right? It's not a team-wide emphasis to get that in your grill, in your jersey, in your jockstrap sort of ball pressure. There's also no true rim deterrent like you would think of, right? Boy, Gel can, but he's not what you think of in the mold of a traditional rim protector, right? Like that's what Braxton Mia was supposed to be for Nebraska last year. Weird scheme fit. Never got used. I don't know what happened there, but it was not the right scheme for Braxton Mia. But, no Braxton Mia type where teams are going to be a little scared to go into the rim. No, obviously Zach Edey, that's a bad comparison. No, I don't know, let's say like even Dubio KK or Isaiah Roby, even for Nebraska, guys with the reputation of swatting your stuff into the second row if you bring it in. So if Nebraska doesn't have elite on-ball pressure and is keeping teams, maybe a little scared to drive because they might get their cookies stolen, and if Nebraska doesn't have an elite rim protector, how is it that Nebraska is preventing shots at the rim this consistently. They have the furthest average opponent shot distance in the country. Well, what Nebraska does is it forces its opponents to drive toward the baseline, and it shows its low man help early. There's a really good breakdown I watched on YouTube. We used to have that no middle defense that was pretty in vogue in college sports. Then the charge rule changed. The no middle defense was really, in a lot of ways, meant to goad teams into charges, right? With that low man, you kind of deke them out. You force them to drive baseline, heavy influence down toward the corners. And then you have that low man rotating over. You have your help digging down on the players in the dunker spot and leaving that deep and opposite pass across the court open in order so that low man can rotate over to take a charge. Well, it's become harder to take a charge in college basketball with the way that the rules are written, but Nebraska is still playing a lot of those no middle principles in a way that they still rotate that low man over. But what Nebraska does, we've seen it for years now under Fred Hoiberg, is they show it so early that they're essentially getting a light trap at the dunker spot down in the short corner is another way to think of that kind of vertical hash mark that's behind the backboard. Nebraska is showing its help that early, influencing and making teams drive that way in order to force a tough pass through traffic or get a long pass out that will force the offense to reset and give Nebraska a chance to communicate and really recover out. So that is the scheme for Nebraska. What does this scheme do for Nebraska? We'll highlight some more positive numbers for the Huskers, the strengths of this scheme, and maybe where the weaknesses are that teams haven't exploited yet this year. Can Nebraska stave off teams exploiting that, or is it just a matter of time? We'll highlight more about what Nebraska's no middle early help scheme shows opponents and what it's done well for Nebraska when we return to the Corner 3.
This is your year to win way more than bragging rights. At Warhorse Casino, your love of the game could earn you serious cash. The Pro Football Frenzy is free to play with cash prizes all season long, like up to $1,000 weekly, with your chance at $1 million, all while earning tier points and comp points every time you place a sports bet. Only at Warhorse Casino. Wagers may only be placed on Nebraska-based teams when played outside the state of Nebraska. Must be 21 or older to gamble. Gambling problem? Call 1-833-BET-OVER.
Hi, Sean Callahan here for Coppell Chevrolet GMC, the #1 fastest growing GMC dealer in the Omaha and Lincoln area. We are going to keep this train rolling in a big way with new half-ton and 4x4 pickup trucks starting at $12,500 off list price or 0% financing. You heard that right, $12,500 off list price or 0% financing. You pick which one works better for you. Please stop on in the dealership and meet the team or check us out at koppelcars.com. Stock number C280930. All deals with approved credit.
At Fairway Meat Market, your family, and as part of the family, they want to save you money on your meat and groceries. Now through December 14th, enjoy USDA Choice 8-ounce New York strips, $6.99 each. 85% lean ground beef, $4.98 per pound. All natural boneless chicken breasts, $2.48 per pound. And holiday gift boxes are available for $50. That's all at Fairway Meat Market in the Rockledge Square Shopping Center, just south of 84th and Van Dorn.
Hey there, this is Paul Scheel, owner of High Electric. I want to thank our friends and loyal customers and introduce High Electric to those looking for a new electrician. We've been serving the Lincoln and Omaha area for over 30 years, from design to install, upgrades, and repair. If you are a homeowner or a small business needing some electrical work, call us at 402-466-6606 or check us out at hyelectric.com. We look forward to hearing from you.
When equipment breaks down and operations come to a halt, every single second counts. So why is your maintenance team spending 60% of their time doing anything but turning wrenches? MaintainX is the AI-powered maintenance and asset management system that helps your team get back to actually fixing breakdowns. No more searching for manuals, no more hunting down parts, no more drowning in paperwork. With MaintainX, your team can access manuals from anywhere, create new procedures in minutes, and turn voice notes into clear and complete work order feedback. What used to take hours now only takes minutes. Keep your operations moving, not your paperwork. Join over 11,000 maintenance teams that are already fixing more and filing less. Try MaintainX for free today. Go to maintainx.com/AI. That's maintain and the letter X.com/AI.
This Saturday, December 13th, create your own sale at Baumgar's. It's our big bag sale, and you're in control of the savings. Grab a bag and take 20% off all regular priced items that you can fit inside. Toys, tools, clothing, decor. If it fits in the bag, you save. It's the perfect chance to stock up, finish your holiday shopping, and stretch your dollars even further. The Baumgar's bag sale, this Saturday only. Some exclusions apply. See a store associate for details.
Rain, snow, or shine, John Henry's is here to keep your home's plumbing systems working properly no matter what kind of weather Nebraska throws at us. From unclogging toilets and drains to installing new water heaters and water treatment systems, John Henry's is your plumbing expert in the Lincoln and Omaha communities. Visit us at calljh.com or call
John Henry's.
435-5555. John Henry's Plumbing, Heating and Air,
and Electrical.
Happy holidays, Nebraska. The Christmas event of the year is coming to the Lead Center. A Christmas Story, the musical, with all your favorite funny gags. The Fragile leg lamp, the Red Ryder BB gun, the ridiculous pink bunny suit, and more. All the fun of the movie, now with singing and dancing as seen on Broadway, with music by Pasek and Paul, the writers of The Greatest Showman. We triple dog dare you to get your tickets today. Leadcenter.org.
Empower a child today with the Teammates Mentoring Program by building a relationship based on strengths and chart a brighter future 1 week at a time. Find out how you can be a mentor by visiting LincolnTeammates.org. Become what you needed as a kid by joining the Teammates Mentoring Program today.
Are you looking for an exciting new way to put your skills to work? Explore new career options in the fintech industry at Currency, a Sandhills global company. We offer full-time positions in financial sales, compliance, operations, and other fields. We also offer a 4.5-day work week, an attractive benefits package, and opportunities for advancement. Put your motivation to work and grow with us at Currency. Visit gocurrency.com/careers to learn more.
Hi, I'm Scott Miller, Business Development Officer at Midwest Bank's Lincoln branches. As a lifelong Lincolnite with over 30 years of experience in financial management, I'm here to help your business grow and succeed. My focus is building strong relationships with businesses and clients across Lincoln. Because at Midwest Bank, we believe banking is about people, not just numbers. Visit us at midwest.bank or stop by one of our Lincoln locations. Your community, your bank. Midwest Bank. Member FDIC.
At Raising Cane's, we focus on being the best at one thing and getting it right every time. Which is why every chicken finger meal we serve is marinated, hand-battered, cooked to order, and made just for you. Quality isn't complicated, and our menu is proof.
Raising Cane's chicken fingers, one love.
Skip the line and order with our app or online.
Back to the Corner 3 on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Austin Oerman.
That's right. Welcome back in. It is the Corner 3. I am your host, Austin Oerman. You are you, along for the ride. 402-464-5685. If you're listening live and want to be a part of things, you can also drop a comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. See it and get to it as best I can throughout the course of the show. All right, first segment. We spent talking about what Nebraska's scheme was generally. Now, the results of that scheme. What do we see from Nebraska? Led with some of these numbers to go ahead and start the show. I'll pull them back up and get them on screen for you. The kind of the surface numbers for Nebraska: 67 points a game, 46% field goal percentage, 29% from three, 74% free throw opponent percentage, 38.5 rebounds per game for Nebraska. That's a plus 2.2 per game for the Huskers, and then about 5.5 steals and 3 blocks per game for Nebraska. Some more advanced numbers, but first I want to read this from Eric Haslam, because I do think it's a really interesting sort of synopsis. Eric Haslam writes, the Nebraska defense will be extremely problematic for most opposing offenses, allowing about 91 points per 100 possessions versus an average opponent. The club is ranked 8th overall in defensive efficiency. Nebraska is one of the very best in the lane in overall defensive field goal percentage. The team ranks number 6 nationally in field goal percentage allowed, as an average opponent only makes good on about 36.5% of their total attempts from the floor. Nebraska also does an outstanding job shutting down the opposition from behind the arc. They rank 9th in the NCAA in defensive three-point percentage, allowing an average opponent to make just 28.2 of their attempts from afar. And to expose that weakness, this team will force an average opponent to shoot the three more than they normally would. Of their total field goals, an average chunk for an average opponent will come from a long distance, about 50%. Nebraska, lastly, does a fantastic job preventing opposing teams from capitalizing on chances from offensive rebounds. This squad allows an average opponent to convert only 3.3% of all second chance opportunities into points. That is 9th in the NCAA. We'll get back to a couple sentences in there because I do think that it's kind of the crux of the issue for me with Nebraska's defense. But if you get back to some of the numbers, some of the Bart Torvik numbers that stood out to me, 45.1% effective field goal percentage allowed. That factors in the increased value from a three-pointer. Nebraska 28th in the country in that stat. Nebraska only allowing an offensive rebound percentage of 27.5, which is in the top 100 nationally. So not elite, but certainly for Nebraska, a step in the right direction. Let me pull up the Torvik numbers for you again. Might be a little bit hard to read. I'll try to highlight it as best I can. But here, this defensive rebounding percentage category, also known as opponent offensive rebounding rate, 27.5% is the lowest mark of the Fred Hoiberg era for opponents, aka for Nebraska. It was 33%. Opposing teams got 1 in every 3 rebounds after they put a shot up against Nebraska in Fred Hoiberg's first year. That number was still in the red into year 3. And then it kind of stabilized in about middle of the pack in 2022-23. Dropped a little bit, but not necessarily the most glaring weakness in 23-24, although that's one of the ways that A&M beat Nebraska. Last year, a step in the right direction, borderline top 100, and now this year creeping up near the top 75. So Nebraska is doing a better job as a unit of rebounding the basketball. Some other numbers that stand out to me, obviously the three-point shooting percentage for Nebraska opponents is very low, and we'll get to that coming up here. But the other function of the scheme for Nebraska that has been a staple of Fred Hoiberg teams, move with me just 2 columns over here from this opponent offensive rebounding rate to FTRD. No, not code for farted. Free throw rate on defense. There has not been a bad year relative to the rest of college basketball in Fred Hoiberg's time. Even his first year, where they were pretty bad defensively, Nebraska allowed opponents only a 21.8% free throw rate. Went up to 28 and 29% in the next 2 years, but then 22-23, Nebraska does a great job of defending without fouling. Again, 21.9, that's 6th in the country that year. They make the tournament, allowing opponents to shoot a free throw a rate of only 27.7%, top 60 in the country. Last year, Nebraska was elite at defending without fouling and not putting teams on the free throw line at 26.6%. And then this year, early on, 10 games, yes, but even another step in the right direction for Nebraska, an opponent free throw rate of just 20.6%, which is 3rd in the country. And this number makes sense when you think about how I describe Nebraska's scheme. It's not up in your business like St. John's, not being handsy, not all up in your grill and, being physical with you. So hands are off, which is a good way to prevent fouls. The low man in the defense, when Nebraska forces a player to drive baseline, shows help early, because where do most fouls occur? At the rim. If teams don't get to the rim, it's harder to draw a foul at the rim. So ball pressure is a little on the lower side for Nebraska. You're not up in someone's business, and you're cutting them off before they ever get to the rim. That's why this free throw rate defended number is consistently so low under Fred Hoiberg. It's a product of the scheme, and that's helpful because other teams have shot pretty well from the free throw line against Nebraska. This year, teams are shooting 74% from the free throw line against Nebraska, which is not a great mark, but Nebraska can't really control what opponents shoot at the free throw line. Nebraska only has some semblance of control over how often it puts teams at the free throw line, and it doesn't put them there very often. Some other numbers to highlight as we scroll through the Torvik numbers. I'll see if I can find it. Maybe it was on Nebraska's specific profile. Give me just a minute here. I know the number, the block percentage for Nebraska is not very high. The Huskers don't block a lot of shots. Yeah, the number that I have written down for Nebraska is a block rate of 8.7%. So essentially, well, that'd be 1 in every 12-ish shots Nebraska blocks, 223rd in the country out of 365 teams. And then the 3-point rate. This is really the crux of the issue, friends. 3-point rate, not percentage, 3-point rate defensively. How often do teams shoot threes against Nebraska? Before the Wisconsin game, it was 51.3% of opponent shots came from three, 362nd out of 365 in the country. Some other kind of niche stats from the Evan Miyakawa numbers. Nebraska with a D rank of 10 as a team, which is 18th in the country, but third in the Big Ten, behind maybe the most elite defensive team so far in Michigan at a 19.9 rating and Michigan State at 14.4. Nebraska has only allowed 4 kill shots. Maybe if you follow me on Twitter or listen to the shows, you're familiar with a kill shot, but Evan Miyakawa coined that term a 10-0 run. He thinks that's a big factor for success for a lot of these teams. The more 10-0 runs you go on and the fewer you allow, the better off you're going to be. So Nebraska has allowed 4 kill shots, which is toward the bottom of the Big Ten. Some teams have allowed 5, 6, or maybe even 7, but none so far this year. But what makes that number a little more tenable is that 4 is not very many through 10 games. If you give up one 10-0 run every few games, it's not going to be the end of the world. But Nebraska's gone on an average of 1.3 kill shots per game, 13 10-0 runs across 10 games for Nebraska. So a margin of +9 is good. You can live with that. If you're having more kill shots than your opponent, that's generally a predictor of future success. So there are some of the numbers for Nebraska. And now kind of my thoughts on wrapping it all together. Nebraska is playing at an exceedingly high energy level, especially these last couple games. Easy to do when you bring Creighton into your building and you have your Big Ten openers a ranked team. So they're playing with energy. They're generally executing their scheme well, pretty consistently to start the year. And yet there are some numbers in here that I haven't highlighted yet that I'm going to get to, and others I'm gonna emphasize that still give me some reservations about this team's defensive ceiling, right? I think the floor is fine. Sure, there'll be nights where it looks bad. You see Oklahoma, teams will be able to score on Nebraska sometimes, but that's 1 game out of 10, right? If Nebraska is good on defense, good or better, 9 times out of every 10 games, you make that trade-off in a heartbeat. My reservations come from really 2 areas. Number 1, 3-point rate allowed. Nebraska is allowing teams to shoot a bunch of threes. Somewhere between 50 and 51.5% of Nebraska's opponents' shots have come from 3. And there's not a lot of elite shooters in college, but it's just part of the gamble that Nebraska makes. And I want to go back to this from Eric Haslam. Nebraska also does an outstanding job shutting down the opposition from behind the arc. They rank 9th in the NCAA in defensive 3-point percentage, allowing an average opponent to make just 28.2% of their attempts from afar. It's that word allowing that really stands out to me, and I'll continue to break that down as to why. Because my questions for Nebraska is, will teams shoot this poorly from 3 all year? Are there better shooters in the Big Ten than Nebraska has faced so far? Will teams' familiarity with Nebraska start to kick in? Remind them that, hey, if you take care of the ball and hit your skip passes, you can still get open shots against this Nebraska team. You saw Creighton do it. You saw Wisconsin do it. When they drove baseline, they didn't give Nebraska's trap a chance to get set up when their offense was going well. They would get past the guard or wing defender and then kind of snake the pick and roll, right? They wouldn't just keep their head down and go to the baseline and run into the big. They would hit that crossover to get back to the middle of the floor, where Nebraska is either collapsing if things are going well and forcing the kick out, or the big's out of position, the help is slow to rotate, and there's something in the middle of the floor, right? And then there's the age-old question of just how much influence does Nebraska have on opponent 3-point percentage? We don't have the same data in college basketball quite yet as we do in the NBA. But when you think about the types of threes that Nebraska opponents are getting, Nebraska has some impact in forcing the kinds of shots that opponents get. Nebraska has some level of impact on opponent shooting percentage based on the type of shot they get, whether it's a corner three, and above the break three, and off the catch three, a spot up three, and off movement three, and who shoots it. Who is Nebraska getting the ball funneled to? Is it a capable shooter? Is it a streaky shooter? Is it a so-so shooter? Or is it a bad shooter? Nebraska has some control over that, but Nebraska does not have ultimate control over who shoots the ball for the opposition, right? I'm not sure Nebraska opponents are going to continue to shoot this poorly from three against Nebraska, who could play just as well defensively with the same energy and enthusiasm and execution. And yet teams might just hit more of their open threes, right? Maybe some teams have better shooters that are taking those open shots. Teams that are more familiar know how to get to those shots against Nebraska. Energy and effort do a certain part in forcing those into tougher shots, making them work harder, throwing off the rhythm and the timing. And Nebraska deserves commendation for that. But ultimately, if the other team gets an open shot, it's not really a measurable skill to determine how much, effort Nebraska made the other team expend into getting that shot, whether it goes in or not, right? Nebraska's deflections and rotations and energy can probably keep teams more uncomfortable from three than I might want to believe on the surface. But it's not a guarantee every night, right? Even if Nebraska packs the same energy, effort, and enthusiasm, teams might just start hitting more shots against Nebraska. And that's not really Nebraska's fault. It's just the gamble and the math that Nebraska is willing to play that we'll continue to get into here over the last about 15, 20 minutes of the show. The other number outside of allowing that many threes from opponents, and Haslam notes this as well, teams that are uncomfortable shooting, that don't have good shooters, Nebraska forces them into those shots. And that is on purpose. That's a byproduct of the scheme. But the easiest way for a defense to make sure that the ball does not go in the hoop, or does not even have a chance to go in the hoop, is to take it away, is to steal it or to block it. And Nebraska has relatively low numbers of steals and blocks. I highlighted that for a reason, right? From Bart Torvik, Nebraska's block percentage is just 8.7%. So they're not necessarily swatting the ball into the second row or altering a lot of shots. Enough here and there that you can't just drive willy-nilly. It's not like Purdue's paint defense last year, but it's not like Nebraska has a guy at the rim that teams are scared of, that they're going to take a floater instead of challenging when they have the opportunity and they beat Nebraska's scheme. The other number, and I'm glad the Bart Torvik numbers are still pulled up here, is Nebraska's turnover rate forced on defense. So, forced turnover rate is what Bart Torvik would call it if you're watching here on stream. Offensively, Nebraska's borderline elite in terms of taking care of the ball, turning it over just 14% of the time, 33rd in the country. But defensively, Nebraska doesn't necessarily turn teams over that much. They have their deflections goals in terms of getting hands on tipped passes and tipping balls out of bounds, of throwing off the dribble. And the more of those you get, the more of them will turn into steals. But opponents are only turning the ball over 18.4% of the time against Nebraska, which is, upper third in the country. I mean, 66th, 67th percentile, give or take. And that's been a common trend. Let's just look down this column here. If you're with me on stream, 18%, 17.5%, 16%, 17.5%, 18%, 18%, and just shy of 19% opponent turnover rate. Nebraska has never forced turnovers at a high level under Fred Hoiberg. I'm not saying that's right or wrong. All I am saying is that if Nebraska is not going to block shots and Nebraska is not going to force takeaways, then Nebraska is at the mercy, more so than the majority of teams across the country, of how other teams are shooting that night. Nebraska, in some ways, is giving up some agency on the defensive end, right? The two consistent impact box score defenders are Sam Hoiberg, who's played better offensively this year, anecdotally, than any year of his career, and Berke Boyichenjo, who's up and down on offense. Those are your two most consistently impactful defenders. Nebraska's defense is bend, don't break, and seems reliant on other teams missing reads and missing shots and generally, just doing poorly instead of Nebraska doing anything tangibly well. It's hard to measure something that you prevent. It's easy to measure something that you cause. Nebraska doesn't cause a lot of havoc. Nebraska does prevent a bunch of efficient shots at the rim and does prevent a bunch of free throws. If Nebraska's not going to take the ball away or physically impact the shot, it is just the logical conclusion of that is that Nebraska, more than other teams, is at the mercy of opposing players making or missing. It's why I have always preferred offense in basketball. As long as you can put a shot up, a shot can go in. You know, yes, there's something so demoralizing about not being able to go anywhere on offense against a team that's up in your grill defensively that you can't drive against. It's got to be demoralizing. It's tough for an offense like Nebraska's, for example. When it gets jammed, it gets pushed off its spots. It feels bad to not be able to do anything, to not have those answers, except that you always have one answer. As long as you have the ball and you can chuck something up, the ball has a chance to go in. And obviously, some shots have a higher likelihood than others of going in, right? Which is where Nebraska's scheme, the way they contest shots, the way they communicate out the inefficient shots that they force from the mid-range and from bad shooting teams, that's the risk Nebraska's willing to take. But any given night, some team hits a couple stupid ones. All you can do is say, well, they hit them. You know, we have to tip our cap. We did what our defense wanted them to do. The only way for any defense of all time, to prevent with 100% certainty points going up on the board, the only 100% effective way to keep points off the board is to take the ball away from the other team or to block it. It's the only way. You are 1,100,000% guaranteed to not allow points. Nebraska just doesn't do that. Nebraska does a good job of forcing tough shots, of recovering, of being in the right place at the right time defensively. But if the other team can put a shot up, it has a chance to go in. And when the offensive talent improves from the non-conference into Big Ten play, it's going to be tougher for Nebraska to rely on opposing misses. They can do it. They can make a living this way. And I think with as good as the offense can be for Nebraska, they just have to be good enough defensively, right? Even if this number backslides a little bit into a top 40 unit instead of a top 25 unit, that's still probably good enough for Nebraska because of the trick up the sleeve, the math trick. The underrated part of Nebraska's defense can be its offense. That's how we'll wrap up the corner three next. All right, Lincoln, if you're a diesel technician who's ready to earn up to $40 an hour and you're tired of working nights and weekends, listen up. Inland Truck Parts and Service is hiring experienced diesel technicians right here in Lincoln, and they're offering what every hardworking tech wants. Monday through Friday hours, no nights, no weekends, and paid training on advanced diesel technology. With 37 locations across 12 states, career advancement opportunities are endless. Start building towards your future and apply today at inlandtruck.com. That's inlandtruck.com. Or text APPLY to 785-369-1320.
Happy holidays, Nebraska. The Christmas event of the year is coming to the Lead Center. A Christmas Story, the musical, with all your favorite funny gags. The Fragile leg lamp, the Red Ryder BB gun, the ridiculous pink bunny suit, and more. All the fun of the movie, now with singing and dancing as seen on Broadway, with music by Pasek and Paul, the writers of The Greatest Showman. We triple dog dare you to get your tickets today. Leadcenter.org.
Big value and big flavor meet at Wings and Rings thanks to the all-new delicious Duo Combo. This is the one you've been waiting for. Get one half-sized appetizer and 2 entrees with a side for only $19.99. Bring a friend for the best deal in town on any day of the week, during game time, or whenever the heck you want. Their made-to-order wings and chicken sandwiches are waiting for you at their 68th and O and 40th and Old Cheney locations. Stop by Wings and Rings and celebrate every day with the best meal deal in town.
Lincoln's go-to for fun isn't new. It's a place that's been a staple of the city for years and is only getting better. Matson's Bowling and Billiards always has open bowling available with no long lines, unlike other centers. They have live music almost every weekend and great food at EJ's Bar and Lounge, with seating for 150 people. They have popular meals like the EJ Burger, pizza for the whole family, and famous EJ's Wings. Contact Sarah to book a party for friends, coworkers, or family at Madsen's Bowling and Billiards, just south of 48th and Holdridge.
Hi, Sean Callahan here for Coppell Chevrolet GMC, the #1 fastest growing GMC dealer in the Omaha and Lincoln area. We are going to keep this train rolling in a big way with new half-ton and 4x4 pickup trucks starting at $12,500 off list price or 0% financing. You heard that right, $12,500 off list price, 0% financing. You pick which one works better for you. Please stop on in the dealership and meet the team or check us out at koppelcars.com. Stock number C280930. All deals with approved credit.
Hi, I'm Scott Miller, Business Development Officer at Midwest Bank's Lincoln branches. As a lifelong Lincolnite with over 30 years of experience in financial management, I'm here to help your business grow and succeed. My focus is building strong relationships with businesses and clients across Lincoln. Because at Midwest Bank, we believe banking is about people, not just numbers. Visit us at midwest.bank or stop by one of our Lincoln locations. Your community, your bank. Midwest Bank. Member FDIC.
At Raising Cane's, we focus on being the best at one thing and getting it right every time. Which is why every chicken finger meal we serve is marinated, hand-battered, cooked to order, and made just for you. Quality isn't complicated, and our menu is proof.
Raising Cane's chicken fingers, one love.
Skip the line and order with our app or online.
With UBT, you've got total control over your money. Like Doug, who runs his game day tailgate like a well-oiled machine.
I got burgers, brats, chicken, dogs, plus all the fixins. And with the UBT Go app, I can track my food spending from anywhere. They don't call me Grill Sergeant for nothing.
No matter your goals, UBT helps you feel good about reaching them. Union Bank and Trust, member FDIC.
This Saturday, December 13th, create your own sale at Baumgar's. It's our big bag sale, and you're in control of the savings. Grab a bag and take 20% off all regular priced items that you can fit inside. Toys, tools, clothing, decor. If it fits in the bag, you save. It's the perfect chance to stock up, finish your holiday shopping, and stretch your dollars even further. The Baumgar's bag sale, this Saturday only. Some exclusions apply. See a store associate for details.
Are you ready to make a difference this holiday season? Schwiezo Construction and TMCO are hosting a diaper drive December 5th through the 19th. They're collecting diapers, pull-ups, and wipes to benefit TMCO Prep Academy, the Nebraska Diaper Bank, and Forward. Drop off your donations at Schwiezo Construction, 93.7 The Ticket, Pine Lake Self-Storage, or White Elm Brewery. Together, we care for our community. For more information, please visit Schwiezo Construction's website or Facebook page today.
Back to the corner three on 93.7 The Ticket. Here is your host, Austin Oerman.
Having some fun talking Nebraska men's basketball defensive scheme identity and some numbers here on the corner three. Appreciate everyone tuning in here throughout the course of this show. As I promised, the final segment of this show, we'll take a look at how one of the other weapons that Nebraska men's basketball deploys on defense is actually its offense. You know, best offense is a good defense. Best defense is a good offense. Yeah, we've heard all that stuff before. But shout out to Joe Jackson, does a really good job writing about college basketball. He has a really good Substack. And that's where I'm going to end up pulling some of these numbers from here in just a second. But an underrated part of Nebraska's defense, and something that I think can help it keep performing maybe above my expectation for it, is that the offense is playing the math as well. Right? So Nebraska allows the fourth most three-pointers of any team in the country, but it actually shoots a higher percentage of its own shots from three than it allows its opponents to shoot. As many threes as Nebraska allows its opponents, Nebraska is actually taking a higher percentage of its own shots from three. Not by much, but just enough. And for a team like Nebraska, not elite on defense, not elite on offense, it's those little margins that start to add up. Even Nebraska's shooting percentage, right? Let's go ahead and just pull up these numbers from Bart Torvik again. You look at Nebraska's three-point shooting percentage. Nebraska is only shooting 35% from three. And I say only, that's not bad. You know, it's not elite by any stretch of the imagination. I thought a team like Nebraska, the way it was built, would need to be much closer to the 37, 38% range. And there's still plenty of time. We're only a third of the way through the season, yada, yada. But that 35% number is really interesting to keep in mind because it's good enough. It's good. It's fine. It's not elite. When you think about the margins, think about this. If Nebraska's shooting 35% from three and its opponents are shooting 28 to 29% from three on similar volume, that math adds up in Nebraska's favor. It's essentially the same game that Nate Oates and Alabama are playing. Alabama has not been an elite three-point shooting team in terms of percentage because they take so many. They're bound to miss more. But what they do is they shoot so many of them and make enough of them that it makes the misses worth it. You also see in these Torvik numbers, Nebraska not pursuing offensive rebounds at a high clip. In fact, they're bottom third in the country in that 288th out of 365 teams in Division I. Nebraska will bomb away. They take their sniper shot, right? Like I said before, if they miss, they miss. They're back. They're reloading for the next one. If they make it, hey, cool. Mission accomplished. Knock one down, put it on the board. We did it. The reason that Nebraska's offense can be such a weapon for its defense is twofold. On the offensive side of things, I'll share this from Joe Jackson again. He posted this a few games ago, but I think it's still going to hold up, certainly within a few percentage points. What you're seeing, if you're with me on stream, is Nebraska's 3-point and rim rate. Where is Nebraska shooting from? Through 7 games, I can only assume this is very comparable even still. Nebraska took 83% games from 3, or what would be qualified as at the rim. Not just a floater, but an actual layup or dunk. 83%, putting Nebraska in the 92nd percentile of all teams. Only 78% of teams in the country take a higher percentage of their shots from 3 or at the rim. 2 of the 3 most analytically valuable shots in basketball. The most valuable shot is a free throw. Nebraska, we can pull up those numbers again as well from Torvik here really quick. Nebraska doesn't shoot a bunch of free throws. A free throw rate of only 30.5%, 281st in the country in games. So Nebraska doesn't shoot a lot of free throws. It has a higher free throw rate on offense than it allows on defense. But even if Nebraska is not getting to the line very frequently itself, it's keeping its opponents off the line. So back to that article from Joe Jackson. Known maybe Nebraska is not taking the most perfectly valuable analytic shot in basketball, the free throw, but it's got 2 out of 3 down, better than 92% of the rest of the country, better than 91% of the rest of the country. Nebraska at the 92nd percentile, only 7-8 better than Nebraska in that category. That is a huge jump from last year, right? It makes a little bit of sense with Bryce Williams operating as a big piece of the Nebraska offense as he was in the mid-range. Nebraska was pretty average in terms of its 3-point and rim rate. Still 70% of its shots, but that's average for college basketball last year. Then Nebraska's been in the 60s the 2 previous years. Really good analytically, right, in terms of where Nebraska was shooting from. But think about this. Just 5 seasons ago, now 6 seasons ago in 2020, 2021, Nebraska was also 92nd percentile in terms of where it took its shots from in a 3-point range and at the rim. But 92nd percentile 6 seasons ago was 75%, 3 out of every 4 shots. Now, fast forward 6 seasons, 92nd percentile is 5 out of every 6 shots at right about 83%. Okay, so that's the offensive side. 83 essentially percent of Nebraska's shots are coming from 3 or at the rim. How does that factor into what Nebraska wants to do on defense? Well, my friends, let's go ahead and do a little bit of math. Okay. Go back to another tweet that we showed before. Okay. From CBB_players. Nebraska has the single best rim denial defense in the country per Hoop Explorer, allowing just 19% of opponent shots at the rim. Let's do some math. 50% of Nebraska's opponents' shots come from 3. 1 out of every 2. Only 1 in every 5, or slightly less than, shots from Nebraska opponents come at the rim. Okay, so there's 70% of an opponent's shot diet is from 3 or at the rim. Okay, back to this from Joe Jackson. Nebraska's offense, 83% of its shots get an analytical green light. Nebraska's defense holds teams to 70% of that analytical green light for being a good, valuable shot. Okay, 83% to 70%. That's a raw 13 percentage point difference. But in practice, it's closer to a 20% impact. If you say that, 13 is close to 14, 14 is 1/5 of 70, you need to take an extra 1/5 of your shots from your opponents to match Nebraska's rate at essentially that 83, 84% mark. That's playing the math. That's playing the numbers. That is the gamble that Nebraska is taking offensively. Defensively, Nebraska says, you can shoot threes. We don't think you'll make them. But what we know you're not going to do is get to the rim against us, which is still weird to think about a team that Fred Hoiberg has even said is maybe a little bit athletically challenged. Has still done that good of a job of preventing shots at the rim. Only 1 in 5 at the rim. That's huge for a team like Nebraska that doesn't look like it should have the personnel to be able to limit teams from getting to the rim and finishing there. Nebraska doesn't foul, doesn't give teams many points at the free throw line. They make teams beat them from 3, except that Nebraska is making that same bet on offense. Nebraska is saying, we will shoot threes at a higher rate than you. We will make enough of them to make it worth it, and we will run enough sets and have enough on-ball creation that we can still get downhill to the rim, whether it's a Hoiberg drive, a Lawrence drive, a Frager drive, the occasional masked post-up. I'm not sure that factors into the rim percentage, but for the purposes of our discussion, we can totally tangentially. Nebraska is not doing one thing overwhelmingly elite on the defensive end aside from not fouling. Nebraska's scheme is playing the math. It's playing the numbers. And it's doing it when you think about complementary gameplay on both sides of the ball. We will force you to take shots you're not comfortable taking, and we will force you into non-paint twos, analytically invaluable, and we will avoid those shots at seemingly all costs. Think about it from the offensive perspective here as we get ready to wrap it up. The psychological aspect of opponents having to play catch-up and chase points can force a team to abandon itself, like Wisconsin did on Wednesday night, which is part of why it's so important for Nebraska to start games off strong. Now, we've seen Nebraska get away with not starting fast. The Oklahoma game comes to mind, right? Nebraska good enough offensively, Oklahoma porous enough defensively that Nebraska could get away with it because they had enough offensive talent against an overmatched defense of Oklahoma. Nebraska hit its shots. It can get hot in a hurry. We have seen that. But where the advantages will start to compound for Nebraska, and I think make this defense continue to play up and look better than it actually might be in a vacuum, is if Nebraska is able to throw the first punch or two, play from ahead, and make other teams feel like they're chasing points, like they're more reliant on shooting threes than they want to be, on driving and getting cut off and not getting easy points at the free throw line, that will wear on teams. That will add up in the long run. And that's the thing. For a Nebraska team that has really one guy that everyone nationally could point to, that they bring up first in all sorts of discussions in Rink Mast, when you have other guys that know how to play their roles and hit the shots that they're being tasked with asking, you're not going to overwhelm teams with talent. You don't have an overwhelming statistical advantage in any of those havoc sort of categories in cleaning the glass, in getting steals, and in blocking shots. But you have a bunch of small advantages across the board that add up to winning on the margins, which is probably where Nebraska needs to win with the talent level that we tend to think is generally available for the Huskers. That'll do it. I think that was a fun look at the Nebraska defense. Tell me where I'm right. Tell me where I'm wrong. Let me know what you think. 402-464-5685, or the easiest way, tweet at me at Austin_Oerman. Would love to hear from you. Nebraska, Illinois tomorrow at the time of this recording. Podcast ought to be up later tonight, but if not, enjoy it over the weekend. And we'll see how well what I said holds up throughout the course of the season. Nebraska will play Illinois We'll have New Hampshire and North Dakota to round out the non-con after that, and then into the meat of Big Ten conference play. Be tracking this stuff all year long, probably talking about it here on the Corner 3, or if not, certainly on Old School with Foreman and Norman weekdays 3 to 6. This has been the Corner 3 live 6 to 7 Friday nights here, 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. It's been a blast. Thanks for hanging out. We'll talk again soon.